Investors used to stick their nose up and not want a mobile home. They would just give me the lead because they were too good for them. Well, now they're buying them because they can't find yield anywhere else. I think mobile homes, especially when you get to the old ones, they're cash flow machines.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odom and Steven Silverman.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odom, along with Steven Silverman. Steven, interest rates going up. That's been the talk of the town for the most of this year. We need to get somebody on. We need to talk to some of our folks who are mortgage savvy to come on and tell us what's going on, what they can rub their crystal ball and see what's going on for the future. But probably multiple Fed rate increases this year expected, and we're just beginning on the cycle.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because traditionally the moment you see an increase in interest rates, you see cap rates change, and yet cap rates are staying compressed. And that's because demand is still there. So it'll be an interesting period we're going through, and we have to see how it shakes out. But, just as brokers, there's still a lot more demand than there is supply. And it's amazing to me that so many investors are willing to accept such low cap rates.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting market. I get very nervous whenever you see parabolic increases in anything, because usually that usually doesn't end well. But maybe it is different this time. Certainly there's not as much debt in the market as there was last time we had a pullback. So it might be just a different market this time. Wanted to take a minute just to read a review from Goya187. It says, informational on our podcast. He left his review on, looks like on the Apple podcast. He says, being from Chicago, where taxes are really hurting us, it's nice to hear a motivating South Florida podcast about real estate. My family and I are wanting to move down, and I currently flip here in Chicago. Thanks to your podcast, I've opened an LLC with my partner, and I'm more comfortable than ever getting into real estate in South Florida and hope to start a new life in the near future down there. I hope to continue to hear you guys for years to come. Very informative. Goya 187, that's meaningful to us. Really appreciate that review. Sometimes we just feel like we're talking into an empty room, and when we're actually...
That's just you, Eric.
It's mumbling to myself.
Yeah.
But it does have meaning for you guys to give us this type of feedback. We heard, I had a call from a listener last week that was telling us how much our podcast meant to him. Those things really do keep us going, because we're talking about before we hopped on the show today, we don't do this for money. We don't get business out of this. We don't monetize this. There's no advertising on this show. It really is because we like talking to people about making money. And that's why we do the show. And sometimes you get the feeling, Steven and I ask, is this show worth continuing to do? And, it's a legitimate question, because we are in the business of making money. And certainly our time could be dedicated to the hundreds of hours that our businesses need us every week. But we do take the time out to try to do this podcast. And we want it to be meaningful to you guys. And certainly it's meaningful to us because we do get educated by our guests. But when we hear these types of reviews that it is having a meaningful impact on people, it touches us, and it's meaningful to us to want to keep going. And so if you've not had a chance already, we'd like to hear from you. Send us an email. If you're on iTunes, that's great. Leave us a review there. Any other places on Facebook, whatever, you leave us a review. It is hard for us to program the show. We spend a lot of time and energy in trying to get guests to come on that we think are going to be meaningful to you. And, they do review and pay attention to make sure that it's worth their time too. So Goya 187, I'm not sure your real name is, but definitely appreciate you taking the time to leave us a nice review and help keep us motivated. Steven?
Let's roll with the show. We have an interesting guest today. His name is Adrian Smude. Adrian is a returning guest, and we've known Adrian for several years and we've watched him grow. He specializes in the mobile home market, and it's been quite a period of time that things have changed now. We've been through the COVID crisis. Interest rates are going up. Rental prices are going crazy. And so it will be really interesting for us to catch up with Adrian and see where the mobile home market is going.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've spoken with Adrian Smude. He's a great guy, very well known here in the Tampa Bay area in the mobile home market. So, unless we have something else, let's get rolling on with our guest.
Adrian, welcome back to the Invest Florida show.
Thank you guys for having me back.
Hey, Adrian, really appreciate you, as always. You always have been very generous with your time with us, and we find your story to be fascinating. Gosh, Adrian, how long has it been now? It's got to be over 10 years since you and I first, or close to 10 years we originally met, is it not?
It's probably close to that. Time flies.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of water under the bridge. I mean, you're just getting started. You had a single family home. We met at a RIA meeting, I think, with somebody up in Pasco County, or Lutz. Can't remember.
It was actually at the guy's house.
Yeah.
That's how small of a RIA meeting it was.
Yeah. And I think we had just started, or were starting the podcast at that time. I can't remember. But if that's the case, it's been pretty close to a decade. And I mean, now you're like full bore, like one of the, I don't like to use the word guru because that's not always the
How about diva?
He's a diva. There you go.
a diva in the mobile home market.
He's a diva of the mobile home market. He is the guy you go to get information on mobile homes. It's pretty impressive what you've been doing, Adrian.
I appreciate it. I never planned to be going around speaking and teaching. It just kind of happened. People wanted the information and I was giving it out, and then all of a sudden things lined up. It wasn't part of the master plan, but I've learned you just kind of go with the flow. I wouldn't have been in mobile homes if I followed some master plan.
Well, and if people want to see how far you've come, Adrian, I think they could go back to, it was episode 175, I checked it, where you first started, just explained how you started and how you had to get the confidence to start investing in real estate. So we're looking forward to catching up and getting updated on what's been happening and what you've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, Adrian was so terrified. I mean, I don't want to embarrass you, but I mean, you really were not comfortable speaking in front of people. And now you're like, doing massive speaking gigs. You've written book, you've got, it's really amazing to sort of watch because you're so timid. But I mean, what did you do to sort of overcome some of those fears, Adrian?
Well, I do want to back up to what you just said of how scared I was. I remember going into your office. You asked me about being on the show. And I was so glad you asked me under 24 hours because I was nervous for every minute until I got into the show because I just wasn't a speaker and I was scared of the microphone. Things like just doing it. You asked me to be on the show and you said, if you mess up, it's okay. We can edit. Like that relieved some nerves. And then I don't think we really needed to.
Well, you didn't tell the whole story because the whole story, Adrian, was on the bar's pretty low. We got Steven. And you really can't be much worse, right? Right? So,
he figured if he can do it, I can do it. And then look at Eric. This is going to be a shoo-in. I mean, Eric's running the show. This is going to be the easiest thing.
But in seriousness, it was taking action and then realizing what I projected in my head was actually worse than what really happened almost every time. Mm-hmm. And I also joined Toastmasters, mm-hmm. which most people see it as like a group to learn to public speak, but that's only a small part of it. Somebody once said in Toastmasters, if we sell anything, we sell self-confidence, because pretty much everyone's scared of public speaking.
Yeah.
And when you get in that safe room and you kind of get over it, everything else becomes a little bit easier. Talking to a seller or a buyer, depends on what part of the industry you're in, that actually gets easier just from learning to speak in front of a small group of people.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I was a pretty shy kid growing up, and I had a speech class that I was sort of pushed into in my junior year in high school, which ended up really being a seminal, event for me. That the repetition of getting in front of people and talking and talking and talking, I realized that I'm not going to die. It's not something that to be afraid of, because even there's been some bad things that have happened to me on a stage before, but in front of people, but I don't die from it. I don't get any terminal illness from it, and life goes on, and people really don't think any more about it. And it's as you said, you're your own worst enemy in your head, and you're fighting that battle inside of your own head.
Exactly. And
well, I can tell you, Adrian, I've been married a long time, so actually, I'm more on the listening end. I don't get much of a chance to speak. That's why I wanted to do the podcast.
And then he teamed up with me, and I talk over the top of him. So he's still in the back seat.
As long as Stephen has his 2 or 3 little jokes within the episode, it's complete.
That's the way I see it. But we have to limit as much as possible. Well, let's talk a little bit about, you've got a book that just came out, right?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about it.
So that is the real reason I wrote it, is similar to what we just talked about. I never thought I would write a book. I actually grew up going into school and remedial classes through pretty much all of elementary school, middle school, high school, and some of community college. And I was like, no one would ever think I was going to write a book. And I put it on that crazy list. And I heard on Hal Elrod's podcast, he talked about the self-publishing group. And I was like, I've always wanted to do that. I quickly looked into it and I said, I'm going to do this. And I bought the program for someone to coach me on it. And I wrote on mobile homes because that's what I'm good at. That's what I'm known for. And there's not a lot of education out there on it. So I wrote it on mobile homes, but it was a lot of it for me to get over the fact of I'm not good in grammar, all these negative self-talks. And I will tell you, I learned a lot of grammar just from writing the book. And that was not as difficult as I expected it to be, because there's a lot of programs out there now that help you. But it's a story of how I started as a evicted tenant, because I was a terrible tenant. And I went through my storyline to enabling my wife to be able to retire at the age of 29. And then throughout that storyline, I talk about mobile homes, how to buy them, what you need to look for, and teach you all about mobile home investing. And it's mainly for mobile homes with the land, but there is a lot of information in there that goes general to mobile homes.
Where can we get the book?
Amazon is the best place, because that's the only place I'm selling it. And it's really because they take care of all of the work, and I can be a little lazier. The name is How to Buy Mobile Homes, but if you just search Adrian Smude Mobile Homes, it'll come up. And it is the same color as my shirt. So if anyone has actually met me or seen me on social media, I always wear this bright neon shirt. My wife calls me a yellow highlighter, and it's to attract attention. That's my brand. So I had to keep the book the same color.
Yeah, and I'm sure as you wrote the book, it helped really crystallize your thoughts, because you have to really synthesize it and get it concise.
Yes. And I went back and analyzed every deal I ever kept. And some of them ended up being better than I actually expected, and some of them maybe not as good. But I actually went back and did that homework, where usually I buy it, I get everything set up, renter in there, and I move to the next one. I never actually analyze and see what went right and what went wrong. But I needed to do that in order to properly write the book. So I learned a lot and improved my business just by writing this book to share with people.
That's awesome. And, your branding was interesting because, we kind of had to have the tight shirt gang together, because we had Jeremy Cloder on this past week, and then you, because that was, immediately you came up because you and Jeremy would come to our meetings, and he's got who has had the tightest shirt on. You've got the electric yellow one, and then Jeremy whatever fashionable shirt he had on for the day. Yeah, we had Jeremy on just what was just last week, I believe it was, Stephen.
Yeah, it was
Last episode,
recent. So Adrian, I think you're in a fascinating market niche. And before we get to some of the things that you've been doing, give us an overview of what's been going on in the mobile home market, because COVID's behind us, rent prices are going crazy. The whole world's different now from when we last spoke, and it's continuing to change. And what you see going forward.
Yeah, well, in the last few years, I like to joke around that investors are finally coming down to my level. And before, they used to stick their nose up and not want a mobile home. They would just give me the lead because they were too good for them. Well, now they're buying them because they can't find yield anywhere else. And it's gotten a little bit more competitive. There's still deals out there. And I focus on the home and land, and I focus in Central Florida. And I would say some of these properties that I used to buy maybe $30,000, $40,000, I'm seeing them listing on the MLS for $80,000 and $90,000. So it really has increased. It doesn't mean there's not stuff out there, but there's more people in the space.
Yeah, and the yields that you were showing now, are you still like partnering with people on these deals, Adrian, or what are you doing like in terms of trying to find new opportunities?
Yes, I still partner with people. I use some of my own cash, and seller financing is another way because I'm not scared of the 1960s and 70s, and there's really no financing in those old ones. It's either a friend, family, or the seller. And in order to give the seller the most amount of money, we typically offer seller financing for them. And a lot of investors, even if they're okay with a mobile home, there's a large portion of them that are then scared of the 1960s and 70s. So if you're looking to get in the space, and then you can become comfortable with the older ones that obviously have a little bit more risk, but if you can become comfortable with them, you're niching down even tighter and setting yourself apart, which gives you more of a chance to find properties to get a good yield on.
So tell us what that means. You're afraid of the 60s and 70s. What does that mean?
So June 15th, 1976, that is the year that the federal government HUD basically said mobile homes now have to have a standard that you build them in. There was something before then, but there wasn't a very good standard. I joke around that before that, they made them out of toothpicks. And they are built with very low quality materials. But just like a house, you can update them. You can upgrade them. We have some 1960s that have 2x4s in them, and the entire inside has been rebuilt. It's still on a frame underneath to make it a trailer or mobile home. But you can update them and upgrade the entire thing. I would say that mobile home owners don't update their homes as fast as a site-built homeowner. So if you're going to buy one, there's a higher likelihood it has the original subfloors. And back then, the subfloors were made out of particle board. And for the people that have dealt with particle board before, they know that it disintegrates. It's just sawdust that's glued together as soon as it gets wet.
Right.
And I bought some 1970s that had the original subfloors in them. That means I'm going to have to replace them.
And what does that cost to do like a subfloor replacement?
I am very fortunate to be able to tell you I don't know in today's market because I have not done any major rehab since the COVID costs have gone crazy. I've only done some small ones, and just before everything started going crazy, I'd finished up some pretty big rehabs. I don't like to do big rehabs. It's not something I'm really good at. And I was very grateful. So I really couldn't even give a good quote today. I would get my contractor to walk through really anything I'm going to do besides, I'll say, lipstick. I'm going to get a contractor in today's market because we just don't know. The prices of everything has gone so crazy.
So Adrian, you were talking a little bit about yields. What kind of yields are you seeing for mobile home investors these days?
Well, let's talk about the last two deals I purchased. So the end of 2021 and the beginning of this year, 2022, they're both pretty similar. They're in desirable areas. They're the newest homes I ever bought, which is in 1997. A lot of people will look at me crazy that that's the newest I've ever dealt with. They're double wides. They'll get really good rent. So one of them is rented at $1,600 a month. And I realized afterwards it could have been higher. The second one that we just got, it'll rent around $1,800 a month once we get the current tenant out of there. And both of them were all in right around $100,000. So you don't have to pull a calculator out to realize that's pretty good numbers.
Yeah. Now, if anybody's used to dealing with the 1% rule, that's it's a pretty good number.
And you own the land with us?
And that's the home and land. And traditionally, all I cared about was just the yield. All I cared about was cash flow, because that's how I eat, travel, and have fun. But both of these actually have equity in them as well. So there's some value in that dirt, because eventually it can be maybe $250,000, $500,000 house because of the location. Until that point, I'm going to rent it and make my cash flow. And then when a builder comes by and offers me enough money, I'll sell it and go find another 2 or 3 homes to buy for cash flow. And that's not something I typically get. Like I said, I typically buy just for cash flow. That's really what I like. I'm a cash flow investor. And that's what I think mobile homes really are, especially when you get to the old ones. They're cash flow machines.
And do you have a difficult time finding tenants, or is there a big market, especially now, I would assume, where market rents on apartments are so high?
You hit it exactly, Stephen. We don't have any issue finding tenants. I mean, the market is in our favor as the landlord right now. I'll say that we still run our numbers a little bit lower than a comparable apartment, and that's how I think it should be ran. But I'm dealing in more rural areas, and people value that acre or half acre lot that it's on a lot. They want to be able to bring their utility trailer, or maybe have their animals, not their dog and cat only, but maybe their goat and pig and all these other animals that a lot of people don't allow. We allow them because we're in a rural area, and that's the value that the person that's going to live there really wants. And they don't always care about the structure as much as the privacy and the lot that they're going to be on.
So tell us about marketing, Adrian. Has marketing to find deals changed for you substantively over the years? Because I know on the residential side, man, it drives me bananas. I get 4 to 5 text messages, which I hate. I've said this before on previous podcasts. If you're going to spam me with texts, I will not buy from you, ever. You go to a spam block, and I will not do business with you. There's just other ways to try to reach me. But I don't know how your marketing has changed in finding deals. I know you're going out and you're hustling at the REIAs, and that people know you and your branding in the market that you're in. What else is going on there in terms of trying to find opportunities, Adrian?
Well, first of all, Eric, I'm the same way. I hate the text messages and stuff. I know it works for some people. I just could never do it myself in a marketing, because I just hate getting them. So I was like, I'm not going to send them out. Traditionally, half of my deals have come from word of mouth and networking. As you said, I go to a lot of meetings. I tell everyone what I do. I wear a T-shirt that tells everyone what I do, and it says, my wife buys mobile homes. So everywhere I go, all over social media, I'm consistently telling people what I do. The other half would come from your traditional marketing. The trick is you replace the word house with mobile home. So that's the signs on the side of the road, mailers, MLS, Facebook ads, Google AdWords, all of those things. We have recently decided to cut all the paid ads because they haven't been bringing in the leads the last few years. It's been all through my network. I keep in contact with people. The last few deals I bought were just people I knew, or a realtor that had a pocket listing. The guy was in too much of a hurry to even let it get in the MLS. He said, I just want it gone. She knew what I did, called me up and said, are you interested? And I looked at it and gave my offer. It's that consistent long game of letting everyone know what I do over and over and over again.
I get these text messages. Going back to the text messages, it still just lights me up. But there's something 11, 9, 20 Southwest 129th Street in Largo, something like that. I don't know anything about the property. I've never listed it. I've never owned it. I don't know where it is. I've never even looked it up on a map. And I get these text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning. Larry, it's Joe. How are you? Are you still interested in selling 11920 Southwest 129th Avenue? I'm like, I want to.
Oh, wow.
I want to kill you. And it's. I'm not Larry. Never owned that property. Take me off your list. But I mean, I get one of those probably once a week. I don't know who's selling them these leads, but oh my God, it just lights me on fire.
You're more popular than me. I don't get them that often.
God.
Well, maybe it's your T-shirt that scares them away.
Or they don't like mobile homes.
Well, I mean, I own a lot over in north of downtown St. Pete, and the plan was to build on it. This is not homesteaded, so I just get bludgeoned on that. And there's, it's just such a hot market over there, and there's a number of companies that have moved into the area and with fairly high-paying jobs, and that's a high-end neighborhood. So, everything from the investors thinking they're going to buy something at 70 cents on the dollar, which, I mean, you're smoking crack. I mean, what are you thinking? But anyway, that ended the builders. Then I got a call 3 weeks ago from a builder that said, "What would you take for the property?" And I said, I'm going to build on it. I'm not interested in taking anything on it. And he says, well, look, everybody's got a price. Why don't you give me a number? So I threw out just a stupid number. And of course, there's some pretty heavy hitting folks in St. Pete that have moved over there recently. Like, Kathy Wood being one of them. She's moved her ARC investment group over to St. Pete. And he basically let me know that he's working for a high profile client. Not Kathy Wood. It's probably one of her employees, I would assume. I don't know. But I threw a stupid number out. And I never thought that he would bite at it. He goes, "What's your email address?" So 10 minutes later, an offer came over. And, I want to build. I want to live there. So, I mean, I stopped the building process because, just the pricing got away from me. And I was like, well, I'll just wait till it settles down, because right now I feel like I'm hitting a moving target. But he calls me back 2 days later and says, "You never responded to me. What's going on?" And I'm like, "Dude, I threw a number out. I didn't really want to sell it." And he goes, "Well, what's the number? Let's be serious about this." And I'm like, "There's no number. There's no number." But anyway, that's what's happening in St. Pete right now. It's an insane market.
It's so interesting to me, Adrian, because there's the latest buzzword now is tiny homes, and it occurred to me that those are just like more expensive mobile homes, but everyone's talking about tiny homes and to solve the housing crisis, and they're just so much more expensive.
I have some. When that became that buzzword, I realized that some of mine were the original tiny homes.
Yeah, from the original 60s. Tiny homes. Yeah, the single wides. Yeah, sure.
They may not be as pretty, and they don't cost as much. But yeah, I agree. And you mentioned the affordable housing and the housing problem shortage that we have. I think if people really cared about that, they would allow some mobile home parks to be built. I know there's some bad stigmas on them, but there's some really good park owners out there. It's not what I do, but there's some park owners that have very good quality homes. And I also understand that the municipalities want their tax dollars. But you can get out in the rural areas and allow mobile home parks to be built at a very fair price, which would allow more people to live in more of affordable housing. And I just don't see that it's cared about as much as it's talked about, we'll say, try to be nice to all the parties, because they're just not allowing it to be built.
Yeah, it's not in my backyard, people. And no one, everybody has a solution, but nobody wants to take a hit for it. It's everybody says, "Why don't you do X? Why don't you do Y?" But the affordable housing problem in the state of Florida, I mean, we're headed the way of California, and it's getting bad. And you see it. You see the pressure of people. Their apartments are increasing rent wise 30%. And I saw somebody on Facebook the other posted that their rent went from $2,200 in 1 year to $2,900. This is insane.
Wow.
That's insane, man.
Yeah, I mean, Would you ever think that a 1997 double wide would be renting for $1,800 to $2,000 a month?
No, and when you and I first started talking about it, Adrian, you were renting for like $680, $700 a month. So you've more than doubled since you and I first started talking about the rents on mobile homes.
How long are the leases that you typically sign? Is it just the standard 1-year lease?
Yeah, I do it with the standard 1-year lease, and I like to attract very long-term people, so we actually do not raise it like the one you just mentioned, Eric. We don't raise it more than 10% a year. We tell them that up front. We're not going to do that. We want people that are going to stay there for a very long time. They value staying there for a very long time. I find it's less work for me, and that's the way I really try to set up the business, is less work for me is a good thing. And when you have a vacant property, you do a lot more work at that point. And it also sets the resident up that's going to live there in a better manner because they can predict their future.
Yeah, and just refresh my memory with mobile homes. Are you able to depreciate them? I think you're not allowed to depreciate them, right?
Yeah, the accelerated depreciation, their equipment.
Yeah, so we can depreciate just the home, but let's look at some that I was buying years ago. I would buy it for $30,000. You take out some land value out of that, you're not getting very much depreciation. And it doesn't really outweigh the rent. In your typical single family, you kind of break even with your depreciation and rent where a lot of people do their numbers. I don't always do that, but that's not a bad thing. That means I'm making more money. If I'm making more money, I have to pay a little more taxes. I'm not allergic to paying some taxes. It's a good thing. I'm making so much extra money that I have to actually pay some more taxes.
Tell me, you made a comment about wanting to keep tenants there for a long time. And I think this is a very short-sighted position a lot of investors will have is, like the example of increasing the rent 30%. I mean, it's insane. And if you end up with that space vacant, okay, you might get the $2,800 or whatever you want, but how much are you putting in to turn that property? It's vacant for 2 months while you're cleaning the carpet, repainting, et cetera, and you get somebody else in there. What does that cost that you basically absorbed 2 months of free rent? So, I mean, the turnover cost, I don't think it's one of those items that a lot of investors pay enough attention to. So what are you doing when you're selecting a tenant to make sure that you're getting somebody who's going to stay for a long period of time?
That is an excellent point, and you are right. Not enough people are talking about that. One of my big mentors in that part of the real estate is David Tilney, and I've taken a lot of his stuff. I will give you the very abbreviated version because I literally just taught an entire day class on this topic, and I don't think the podcast episode can go for a whole day. I really found my niche within the rental market, and my avatar is a blue-collar handyman or handywoman. It doesn't mean that's what everyone's avatar needs to be, but when you really find that avatar and you work with the end in mind, so everything I do is to attract and make that person really want the property. Will that person want the location? Do they like a fenced yard or not fenced yard? Do they want to be next to a Walmart or a Target? I think through all of these things, what do they really like? And that helps to attract that person. It's not perfect, but it helps to attract that person. I also rehab for the same manner. I want to attract that person, and we'll say detract, if that's even a word. I want to, everyone else that doesn't fit that avatar, I want them to not want the property, for them to disqualify themselves. So a lot of my properties are ugly. There might be some peeling wallpaper, some really wild colors. I don't make them pretty. And you mentioned cleaning the carpets. I don't do that. I actually like it when they're a little dirty because my avatar resident will come in and look at the place and say, can I paint? And from my experience, if they have a little bit of sweat in there and they did some work, they're willing to stay a little bit longer and they're willing to take care of the property a little bit better. And I'm comfortable with them coming in and doing some work like that. And that is one of the ways I believe I've had some pretty good lengths of time of people living there. It's not perfect. Life still happens and people have to move. Every once in a while, someone will say paints and gets it all over the floor or something. But for me, over the full business, it's really worked. And then I do things like I mentioned, I limit myself. I put it in writing that I cannot raise it more than 10% a year. So they do pay a little bit of a premium for that, but that secures them that they know it cannot go up more than that. Right now, yeah, business-wise, that's not so good for me because I could be maximizing, we'll say, in the short term thinking, but I want someone that's going to stay there. I joke around with them. I want you to move in and stay the rest of your life. And when you pass away, I want your kids to move in, and I want them to stay here the rest of their lives. And then I want their kids to move in. I'm serious, but I make it into a joke that's how long I want them to stay there. I want them to stay there forever. This is their home to take care of. And I do everything I can to help them take care of their home that they're living in. And this is talking in a rental mindset, not like a rent to own or lease option. This is for a rental.
That's John Schaub's. You remember John Schaub,
yes.
Stephen? Yeah, John Schaub used to joke with people, I want you to die in the house. and
I think he has, out of all my mentors, I think he's the one that has the highest record of 31 years.
31 years, yeah.
I have him written down somewhere of one tenant for that long. And my goal is to actually beat all my mentors and their length of time of resident there.
You just have to have the mobile home hold up.
Yeah. You're right. I might be more concerned with the mobile home holding up than the person living there.
But it's really interesting because that's what makes it such an attractive investment, and that's why real estate's such a good hedge for inflation, and maybe why residential real estate is a better hedge than commercial real estate because, commercial, you'll sign a lease and you've got a 5-year with a 5-year renewal and you limit it to 3% a year. And I mean, a lot of the leases I've been seeing these days are 2% a year, whereas on the residential end, you pretty much, you can raise it every year. And if you're talking about you're going to be a good guy and never go above 10%, that's absolutely amazing compared to a traditional commercial property.
And the other piece it does when I tell them that I'm not going to raise it more than 10%, it tells them I am going to raise it. So we have that conversation. I tell them it will go up. But when I put that in writing, they're not shocked that it goes up because we're already agreeing on that. We're just not going to go up more than 10%.
That's like using Eric's old trick. You get them to nod their head, and then when the time comes, they've already agreed. I like it.
Yes, negotiation 101. I told all my agents that he'd come in and, if it's interesting, most folks, they see someone like Donald Trump and think that he's a good negotiator. Donald Trump's a terrible negotiator. I mean, he's, just bludgeoning people is not really the way you negotiate with people. You have to build a bridge. It is about building a bridge and finding ways that it's a win-win for both parties. Chris Voss, who does Never Split the Difference, talks about this, the building the bridge and getting them to say yes, getting them to physically nod their head and say yes is a really important thing. You try to find that bond with them that you can get them to say, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Yes, you're right. Even little things just to get the ball rolling, because most people will start off with a conversation and their arms are folded and they're ready to do battle with you, and you got to figure out a way to disarm them. Yeah,
that's an excellent book. And I want to expand there a little bit. You mentioned Jeremy, that he was just on the podcast. I love Jeremy and Greg and everything they do. I learned a lot from them. And they're my perfect comparison because they have, we'll say the big company, we are a corporation. We have lots of colors and we're a corporation, big.
Sure.
And I am the person next door. We are not in competition. And I did a tiny bit of test marketing actually with Greg with Outfast Realty whenever he was doing a lot more wholesaling. I put his bandit sign right next to mine. Mine was handwritten, and his was 3 or 4 colors. And we got about the same amount of phone calls, but no one called both. And this was a very small test. But I kind of came to a conclusion between that and reading some other stuff. Some people want to deal with a big company.
Yeah.
Because they know what they're doing. It's a big company. And some people are scared of a big company and they want the person next door. I am the person next door. I'm uncomfortable in a full suit and tie and everything. I like my T-shirt. And I like to just go in to the home and just talk.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll actually talk about the mobile home and talk about a price. I just like to talk, and I'm interested in people. That fits me. So everything in my branding and marketing is set up for that. Jeremy and Greg and I are not competitors really at all, because someone that wants to sell, very few of them will actually want to sell and call both of us. They will be attracted to one or the other. And it's a beautiful part of real estate when you really set it up that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in creating those avatars and those marketing channels for each one of you, it's a really good study in that. Adrian, really appreciate you hopping on a call with us again today. If folks want to get in touch with you, they got a mobile home to sell, they want to invest with you, how would they go about doing that?
The easiest way is just to go to adriansmude.com, ADRIANSMUDE. And that page will really just show you both sides, the buying side for My Wife Buys, and then the education side for Lifestyle REI. And it'll just funnel you both ways.
Awesome. Adrian, again, appreciate your time. Stephen, anything else before we let Adrian go?
Adrian, that was awesome. Just keep doing it, and we look forward to speaking to you in the not too distant future and see what you've been up to.
I appreciate, as always, you guys having me on here and the support.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. And that was an update from our friend Adrian Smude. Stephen, impressive guy, man. He's really been very good at finding things that he's not so good at and making him good at them.
So, Adrian's a great guy, and he's just so modest, but look where he's come from. He's started with just like fears, and he's built up a really nice business, and he's got a great reputation in the market.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, we haven't been doing many of the RIAs here recently, but everybody that comes in contact with Adrian really likes him and enjoys doing business with him, and he's a great guy. Always enjoy listening to his stories and see how far he's come, and he's really been an inspiration for a lot of folks. So I definitely appreciate the time that he spends with us. Stephen, Adrian, been on the show before, but he's a great guest. He keeps us updated on the mobile home market.
Yep. So go back to episode 175 and listen to Adrian's first episode, but then also go and look at the other guests that we've had. It's www.investfloridashow.com. Also, download the app, put it on your mobile device so you can listen while you're mobile.
Guys, as always, we appreciate the time that you choose to invest with us each and every episode. So until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odom and Steven Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.